Well, thank you all for being here today. I think as I look around, almost every publication has written a story about what we're going to discuss today. Here's some of the headlines. Inflation set to spoil holidays for struggling families. Inflation is coming for Thanksgiving dinner, making it more expensive than ever before. The third one, how are inflation and the higher grocery prices affecting your holiday meal? The last article points out, again, these are all mainstream publications, your publications. The last article points out inflation is at a 31-year high. Food at home, 5.4% past last year. Latest consumer price index, 11.9% for meat, poultry, fish and eggs. For many of our seniors this Thanksgiving in our colder areas, they'll endure a 30% increase in their heating cost. It's going to be a colder Thanksgiving than it was last year. What does that do to people on fixed incomes? What does it do to the people that are living on $1,200 Social Security checks? So again, these are very real things that we're going to be discussing today, which many of you have reported on. The problem is, as I go around Arkansas, the two things that is constantly comes up is labor, the shortage of supply and labor, and then also the issue of the supply chain. We're hearing problems from our food banks. They are also suffering. So it's not Republicans making the case that we're in this situation. It's all of you, as reported by the media and government statistics. The problem is nothing's being done. No pathway is set by Democrats in Congress, no hearings. So again, we simply are asleep at the switch, and this is greatly affecting real people. I would argue many of the policies that are being done, the massive increase in spending, are actually adding to the problem. It's not the delivery truck driver's fault, and it's not the store's fault. The blame falls squarely on the White House and the Democratic leadership in this chamber and House for not addressing the challenges we face today. Food inflation under President Biden's watch is the highest since the Carter administration. So that's what we're talking about today, and I hear it from Arkansans all the time. I had a lady call in the other day and said that she was making a dish for Thanksgiving. The previous year, one box cost $3. This year she's having to buy 2 boxes because they're in smaller containers, and the price is about 7 times higher. So again, these are real issues, and hopefully we will help find some solutions. Now, next we're going to hear from Senator Thune, a very active member of the House of the Senate Agricultural Committee.
We were together in the House,
We were
too.
together in the House for many years.
Thank you, and I hope to call you chairman of the Ag Committee. This is going to be the most expensive Thanksgiving for American families in history. The turkey itself is going to be 18% higher than it was last year. Other costs, eggs, poultry, fish, meats, year over year have increased 11.9%. That's the October to October increase in inflation there. For people who are going to be traveling over the Thanksgiving holiday, gas prices are at a 7-year high. And if you're heating your home or cooking your food, utilities in South Dakota tell us that the home heating costs this year are going to be 50 to 100% higher than they were last year. I've been warning about this since last February when the Democrats were talking about passing their first massive tax and spend bill. And since that time, we have seen inflation go up, highest rate in 31 years, biggest inflationary increase literally than more than a generation. And the what they're talking about doing now with this next massive and reckless tax and spending spree is going to aggravate and accelerate this inflation issue even more. It's not going away, and the only thing that they can do to make it worse is to flood the zone with more spending, more taxes, and more debt, and you'll see inflation continue to go up. The best thing we can do to stop that from happening is to stop this reckless tax and spending spree dead in its tracks. And I hope that we will have some Democrats who come to the conclusion that that's the case and be willing to work with us to make that happen. Thanks, John.
Well, when Democrats lose Larry Summers and Steve Ratner, you know they're in a bad spot when it comes to inflation. But they've said what is very obvious to anybody who's been paying attention, as Senator Thune and others have said, when you have this much money chasing limited goods and services, it invariably is going to drive up the cost. And we've heard the statistics before. Obviously, with Thanksgiving right around the edge, we're thinking about our usual families gathering around the table and enjoying a great meal. But things like common purchases like eggs are up 12%. And it'll also, for those who are traveling by car or truck or other vehicle, it's going to cost a lot more at the pump. Gas prices are up 60% from last year. And the fact of the matter is that no one's wages are growing at that rate. And so what's happening, effectively, their purchasing power, or people who are on limited income or fixed incomes, or who are not enjoying pay raises at that rate, which nobody is, it's a silent tax on consumers. And the best thing that the administration could do is to stop this reckless spending that they are proposing in the Build Back Better bill, otherwise known as the reckless tax and spending spree. That would be the single most effective thing to keep inflation from eating up consumers' income and raising prices on commodities at the dinner table.
Thank you. Now, we could all say that inflation is transitory. It will go away. These supply chain issues will solve themselves. But we know that's not true, and we know how to solve them. The Biden administration won't do it. Among the things we could do is to allow commercial driver's licenses to be issued to people 18 to 21, so we can have more drivers getting goods from the ports to the stores, and we could make sure that Christmas will not be stolen from kids because their toys are still in the ports and not in the stores. We could see that we don't spend more money, the supposed $1.75 trillion, and instead is going to cost more like $4 trillion. We could stop that one in its tracks if the Democrats would stop the reckless spending. And we could make solutions for farmers and ranchers because they're not getting the increase in prices for this Thanksgiving dinner. They're not getting more for their beef, their turkey, their other poultry, and other food products that are going on the table. That money is going to middlemen and transportation. Transportation costs in general are up between 1/4 in my state and 1/2 in my state over a year ago. And for the least populated state in the nation that has many miles between family members, the cost of driving to get to your Thanksgiving meal is going to be the thing that keeps people at home instead of visiting their family and friends. That could have been addressed had we approved the Keystone XL pipeline and not approved the Nord Stream 2 pipeline over in Russia. These are simple solutions. Americans can be energy independent, just like they were when the previous administration was in office. But no, decisions were made to make us dependent on other countries. And when we're dependent on other countries for our fuel, it costs more. And jobs are lost. And families struggle. So let's be an opportunity society again. Let's solve problems instead of making them worse. The Biden administration came into office saying they were going to be very bipartisan and inclusive, and they've been anything but. And it has brought about an increased misery index for the American people. You know, they don't need to implement these ridiculous policies. And they can save Americans money and make the holidays better with a few simple steps. The first one of which is to kill this $1.75 trillion, going on $4 trillion spending bill that is wallowing around in the bowels of this building.
I want to thank Senator Boozman for putting this together. First off, this will be the most expensive Thanksgiving in history. It'll probably be the most expensive Christmas in history. Think about a typical family. The first thing they want to do is they want to get together. So first they have to do is say, gosh, what's gas cost? Gas is up significantly, over 49%, 50%. So they're going to have to say, can we do this? Can I go see my mom? Can I get home from school? Can we all get together? Number two, anybody that's putting on the meal, unbelievable increase in prices. Number three, I know what my mom used to do when we were kids. She would turn down how much heat we had. So it was colder. I mean, she'd turn it down at night because she couldn't afford the heating oil. That's going to happen all across the country because all these things are going up in price. So it's Thanksgiving, it's Hanukkah, and Christmas. The Biden administration is doing nothing to solve any of these problems. One, they don't have a plan. Remember how they told us it was transitory? Well, every month it's gotten worse since Biden took office. Number two, they don't do anything about the supply chain problem. Number three, with this vaccine mandate, it's going to mean that we're going to have fewer employees. They're telling private companies you have to fire people. What's that going to do for inflation? It's going to make it worse. What's that going to do for job creation? It's going to make it worse. So the Biden administration is causing all these problems. They need to stop spending money like this. Reckless spending causes this problem. Regulation causes this problem. Just anti-fixing things problem attitude causes these problems.
Well, thanks to Senator Boozman for setting up this press conference. I think it's important that all of you guys are paying attention because you're hearing it from the population that you serve. All of us are back in our home states just about every single weekend, and we hear it from the people of our states. When I meet with Nebraskans, I always say, what's on your mind? What's on your mind? Well, we all know what's on their minds. It's the cost of gas that is the highest it's been in 7 years. It's the cost of everything in the grocery store that's going up. And I can read through all these increases in prices for you, but you know them well. The people of this country know the increases we're seeing. You know, to get a dozen eggs, it's gone up about 30%. Ground beef, up 17.7%. Milk a gallon, up 8.4%. Everyday people who are working to provide for their families feel these tax increases that they're suffering under. We can call it inflation, but it's crippling families. It is devastating people on fixed incomes. And when we look at the record inflation that is hitting this entire country, but especially in the Midwest, where we're seeing consumer prices up 7.3%, which is about a percentage point higher than other places in this country. Yes, people know, I know what's on Nebraskans' minds, and it's the costs that they're trying to juggle in making adjustments to their families' budgets. We see that these basic goods are going to, and my feeling is they're going to continue to skyrocket. The United States is facing record inflation. We have supply chain issues. And yet we hear from the administration's press secretary one of her cute comments about the tragedy of the treadmill that's delayed. We need to be serious about what this country's facing. We need to be serious about a supply chain that is backlogged and broken, and we need to look for solutions. President Biden had an opportunity to help with some ag issues this week when he had a summit meeting with President Xi of China. He could have talked about trade. He could have talked about trade and the importance of a trade partnership between the United States and China. He could have addressed supply chain issues in a responsible manner, looking for solutions. And he could have addressed the issues that the ag industry is facing. All of that would help everyday Americans in trying to meet the needs of their families and to provide for their families. He failed again.
Senator Boozman, thank you for your leadership on the Senate Ag Committee and for your organizing today's press conference. Soaring inflation and supply chain woes will make this Thanksgiving our most expensive in history. Kansans know that. They see it. They tell me that they know it, and they're conveying it to their elected officials. I co-chair the Senate Hunger Caucus. The demand for services this Thanksgiving season at our food banks is increasing dramatically as more and more people can no longer afford that Thanksgiving meal. Record high prices are also affecting our farmers and ranchers, those who produce the food. The average retail price for anhydrous, the basis of nitrogen fertilizer, set a record this week at $1,113 per ton, a 38% increase in just 1 month. The 7 other major fertilizers, including phosphate fertilizer, increased 9 to 36%, according to DTN, which tracks monthly fertilizer prices. And don't forget about the massive increase in the cost of natural gas and the cost of diesel fuel and the price of gasoline. This impacts those who produce our food in dramatic ways. A Kansas farmer in McCune told me the total fertilizer cost to raise corn, wheat, and soybeans increased by $350,000 on our family farm. He noted that some herbicides have gone up by as much as 225%. Another farmer, this one in Holcomb, Kansas, told me with the increased cost of inputs like fertilizer, fuel, and chemical, we will have to adjust our farming practices if we want to survive. Commodity prices have also risen. So we're talking about what we grow and produce in Kansas: wheat, cattle, corn, soybeans. For example, wheat sold in Colby, Kansas at the elevator, that increased by 48% in the last year, and fed cattle increased by 21% just in the last year. That should be, in a sense, good news for farmers. Increasing commodity prices should mean increasing revenue. But the reality is that those increasing prices, while damaging to everyone, including what farmers put on their table, is not able to compensate for the ever-increasing cost of production. The input costs exceed the increase in the cost of those commodities. However, what's good news for Kansas farmers in this case turns out not to be good news. Those prices we see on the commodity boards at the grain elevator don't reflect any ability to have profits, but again demonstrate the cost of production being so great that those increased costs damage our farmers. Inflation is hurting everyone, from those at the checkout counter to farmers and ranchers who are producing the food for our Thanksgiving tables. Thank you.
So thanks to our farmers and ranchers, Americans have the highest quality, lowest cost food supply in the world. So Every American benefits every single day from what our farmers and ranchers do. But inflation is getting to be a tremendous problem for all our consumers. And Senator Moran did a good job of talking about how that's affecting our farmers and ranchers. And understand, as our farmers and ranchers suffer those increased costs, that gets passed through to the consumer. And so, back in 1960, about 17% of people's disposable income went for food. But because of the great work of our farmers and ranchers, that's down to less than 10% of their disposable income as of 2020, which is a testament to the great job that our farmers and ranchers are doing. But now they are facing tremendous increased costs, and we're seeing those costs being passed through into the food supply. You saw this last month that the CPI annualized went up 6.2% last month, right? But in the Midwest, it went up 7.3%. That's the heartland. They're the ones out there producing our food supply. So when they pay more for fertilizer, when they pay more for all their inputs, their costs, their spray, when they pay more for containers to ship product to market, when they pay more for fuel, natural gas prices are up triple since January. When they pay more for diesel, all these costs then go into the cost of the food supply. And that's what we're seeing. You've heard these other senators talk about the different statistics, and we can go through them. We're using Thanksgiving because that's a good example. People can understand that they're feeling that very directly. Turkey prices up 18%, potatoes up 17%, onions up 51%, green beans up 39%, butter up almost 30%. The list goes on. So when you fuel your car to go to grandma's house or wherever you're going to go, and then you put together that meal, you are seeing significantly increased costs. So when the administration and Democrats talk about passing their tax and spend bill, they say, oh, well, this won't raise taxes on anybody that's making more than $400,000. That's not true. Inflation is a tax on everybody, and it's particularly a tax on those who can least afford it. That's what these numbers are that we're giving you. This is a tax on everybody, no matter what your income is, because you pay it at the pump, you pay it at the grocery store, you pay it for all the products, goods, and services that you buy. And so passing this large tax and spending bill, trillions of dollars, will make it worse. It will increase the inflation that we're already seeing. So it's absolutely the wrong track. And in the House, they need to put a stop to it right now. I know they're working on it right now. Obviously, we're working very hard to defeat it from passing the Senate as well. Let's get back to working with our farmers and ranchers. Let's get back to, making sure that we have a system that empowers them, less tax, less regulation, so they can provide the goods and services they do better than anybody in the world, that, as I say, benefits every American every single day.
Thanks, John. Well, thank you, John, for coordinating this. And look, I think to build on what Senator Hoeven just said, Thanksgiving, more Americans are going to be driving around to see family and friends, and they're going to start to have sticker shock. They already have it, but it'll even be more when they're taking these longer trips to go see their families. And that's the price at the pump that we're seeing right now. And look, we know that this administration has been focused on exactly raising these prices. And I would love it, respectfully, to our friends in the media, ask the White House, ask Gina McCarthy, who has said, quote, limited energy supplies, oil and gas, driving up prices will accelerate the move to renewables. This is a purposeful policy from this administration to drive up the prices of energy on Americans. Ask them that. Is this your intention? And I think the answer is yes. How do we know that? It's very clear. Day one, they started to focus on shutting down American energy production. They're good to go with more Russian oil production, but American energy production in places like Alaska, they're going to shut it down. Day one, they're focused on limiting and shutting down American energy infrastructure. We know that. Heck, the president and his team are thinking about this Line 5 pipeline right now in Michigan. That will devastate energy costs in the Midwest, but they're still thinking about it. Day one, John Kerry, Gina McCarthy, and others have been going to financial institutions in America saying don't invest in the energy sector, strong-arming them. And definitely don't invest in the Arctic of America, a.k.a. Alaska. We now are looking at the new comptroller of the currency, her nomination, which I think is in real trouble, by the way. One of the reasons, a couple months ago, she was in a seminar saying one of our policy goals is to shut down and bankrupt smaller oil and gas producers in America. These are purposeful policies that are meant to drive up energy costs on working families. And by the way, it's working. It's working. Congratulations, Gina McCarthy, John Kerry, and President Biden. It's working. So here's the big issue. What are they doing about it? You saw the president in his town hall meeting, CNN town hall. He had no plan. Immediate future, he said, can't really do anything about it. This is their policy. They're driving up energy prices on purpose. The only thing we've heard lately is the Secretary of Energy saying, well, maybe we'll tap the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Okay? The experts in this area think that that will have almost minimal impact on prices. They'll do it for political reasons. Here's a much better idea. In Alaska, we have something called the National Petroleum Reserve of Alaska. Tap that. Or tap North Dakota. Or tap Texas. There are policy ways to get out of this problem of high energy prices, but it would be great if you guys could ask the White House, do you really want to? Because I think their policy prescriptions are clear. They want to drive up energy prices on Americans. They're doing it, and it's harming the most vulnerable that we have in our country.
Thanks, Cal. Well, good afternoon, everybody. November is a month that we should all celebrate and be thankful for so many things. I'm thankful for my family. I'm thankful for our health. I'm thankful for our freedoms. And like so many Americans, I'm looking forward to next Thursday when my family will get together on our family farm. My parents will be there. They're vaccinated. They've had their boosters. My children, my grandchildren will all be there. And when we gather around the table, one of the favorite parts of Thanksgiving lunch is what's for dessert. But this year, there won't be blueberry pie, and there's not going to be any pumpkin pie. That's right, refrigerated pies are down 25% from being in stock. Turkeys are over 60% out of stock. Cranberry sauce is 20% out of stock. Sweet potatoes. What is Thanksgiving meal without sweet potatoes, right? So sweet potatoes are 25% out of stock. These supply crises are created by the policies of this White House. Why does the White House want to create supply chain crisis? This all started when we were paying people more to stay at home than to go to work. So now we don't have enough truck drivers to get the goods from the family farms in Kansas to the rest of America. It's a very simple equation what's causing this. It's going to cost more to ship it, of course, as well. And then the vaccine mandates are only exacerbating it even more. Last month, 4 million Americans quit their jobs. A record number. What makes 4 million Americans quit their jobs? You know, we asked our Facebook followers, and over half of those people responded that they were quitting their job because of the vaccine mandate. My friends have already talked about the increased prices of groceries at the grocery store. And of course, this is a great social injustice. When groceries go up, the price of gasoline goes up. This is what the social injustice is. But one reason that the price of all these goods are going up is because the price to grow these goods is going up. The cost of fuel for my farmers in Kansas has went up 60%. The cost of fertilizers have went up 300%. The cost of some of the herbicides and insecticides that we use that allow us to keep soil as a soil sink and do farming that doesn't destroy the soil those have went up over 600%. So our input costs are going up. We can't get our goods to market, and then we can't get people at the grocery stores to work either. The people at the grocery stores are leaving for other jobs as well. So this is a huge vicious cycle. This is a dog chasing its own tail, and the tail's on fire, and our president keeps throwing more gasoline on the fire. Regardless, I'm going to be thankful this Thanksgiving. We live in the greatest country in the world. I'm just disappointed that so many of the grocery stores will have short stock supplies, and I'll be disappointed that the price of Thanksgiving dinner is going to be more than ever before. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for turning out. And again, the point I want to make is a couple of things. First of all, this is an issue that we're hearing from you, the media, as I mentioned earlier. Google stories concerning the crisis that we're having at Thanksgiving regarding food prices. All of you all reporting it, big publications, small publications. We're hearing it from our constituents at home. We're hearing it from our food banks. We're seeing it in the government statistics that are coming out. Inflation is at a 30-year plus high. So as a result, we've got to come up with some solutions. And the solution is not blaming the people that deliver it, the truck drivers. It's not blaming the stores. It's not blaming our farmers. In my case, I feel like we need to blame the administration because we're simply not seeing any leadership in getting these significant problems solved. And as Senator Marshall said, this is it's a huge problem for people on fixed incomes. It's a huge problem for single parents, people that are struggling to begin with. And then we could also talk about the fact that energy prices are going to raise 30% this year. What does that do to a senior that's struggling on a $1,200 Social Security check? Not only are their food costs going to go up this Thanksgiving, but again, their ability to keep warm. So be glad to answer any questions, any easy questions. Yes?
Senator, China trade was mentioned a little bit, and I'm wondering, to ease inflation, are you supportive of the U.S. lifting some tariffs on Chinese goods?
I think it depends. President Trump got tough on the Chinese. As a result of that, because of the fact that they don't play by the rules, instituted tariffs, we're actually having a significant increase in buying power for our farmers and such. That's been really good for our farm community and made it such that commodity prices have gone up some so that they can actually, go forward and them be not impacted so much like they were.
I'd add, as a general rule, we like lower tariffs, but we've got to have fair trade. So we want free trade. We want more trade. That benefits everybody. But it's got to be on a fair basis. And remember, those tariffs in the case of the Chinese were to force them to treat us fairly. And it's working. It's working. You see what the exports are now into the Chinese market. So again, we want lower tariffs, right? Fewer trade barriers, both tariff and non-tariff trade barriers. But other countries got to play fair. They can't take advantage of us. And they've been doing that.
We have to have the ability for those products to come in, but likewise we have to have a fair playing field so that our products can go out. And it's actually much fairer than it was a few years ago. Yes, sir.
Talk about solutions for inflation. I'm curious, what are your proposed solutions to deal with inflation?
Well, one thing you don't do is you don't come into office and eliminate the Keystone Pipeline. That oil, instead of being piped, is being brought by truck and rail, things like that. That makes no sense. You don't eliminate drilling on public lands. All of that is raising the price of fuel, which is such a undercurrent of inflation. So I think policies like that. The other thing is we need to address this much like we did the vaccine. We can be so very proud that we as a nation, put our might towards developing the vaccine in such a short period of time. This is a national emergency, and instead of blaming others, we need to concentrate as a Congress. We need to concentrate as an administration to provide some relief. And I'm not seeing any evidence of that at all. I'm ranking on agriculture. We're not dealing with this problem. And on appropriations, several other committees. Again, this is something that the tendency is to blame others is to come up with real solutions.
And a little more broadly, the former president has put out a slew of statements recently criticizing leader Mitch McConnell. I'm curious if either of you have issues with McConnell's leadership or if he continues.
I'm not familiar with what he said. Yes, sir.
Leader Schumer says the Build Back Better program will help combat inflation. What are your thoughts on his saying that with the Jim spending bill will actually help inflation?
I think that goes contrary to every economic rule that there is. The country right now is awash with money. As I go around Arkansas and go around throughout the country, our cities, our counties, our states have enormous sums of money that they're trying to get spent. Along with that, we had the $1.9 trillion spending bill, which incidentally had no Republican input at all, no hearings as to whether or not that was going to be beneficial or not beneficial. And now we're looking at a 1.75, which probably is much closer to 4 than 2, okay? So as a result of that, I think that is going to be very, very inflationary and really just put gasoline on top of the fire.
Yeah, I think that's the point you heard everybody making up here, is it makes the problem worse. It will increase inflation, and it will be a de facto tax on everybody, including low-income people, as they buy all these things, whether it's food or energy or anything else. That's the very point we're making.
And the other thing about that, again, that's not coming just from a Republican. When you read the mainstream economics folks, I think they would concur with what John and I just said. These are simple truths. Yes, sir.
Could you further describe the labor situation in Arkansas? And secondly, would you encourage employers to raise wages or improve their health care benefits offerings to workers, or improve, the offerings to their employees?
Well, wage, as I go around Arkansas, it doesn't matter if I'm in the biggest city or the smallest city in Arkansas, the first thing that comes up is labor. To the point that many businesses are actually restricting the hours that they're open because they can't find help. Others, you go in and you're in a restaurant, a convenience store, whatever, you immediately realize because of the lines, because of the waits and things, that they're running very, very short-staffed. So it is a huge issue. Regarding wages are coming up dramatically. I think health care benefits also, all of the things that you need to attract people to work for you is happening, in a substantial way. So I think but it is that and the supply chain, which is labor related. Also, I was with a trucker the other day. He said that he had 30 trucks that were sitting idly because they can't find parts. Again, what does that do to the supply chain? John?
No, I think that's right on. Look, the way you improve wages and benefits is you have a growing economy, and then the demand for labor is what makes that happen, not more government programs that create the very problems with supply chain that we're talking about. So again, that's the problem. This is too much government, too much tax and spend, which is being pushed by the administration and Democrats in Congress. That exacerbates the very problems that we're talking about, including getting more people into the workforce and working and providing those goods and services.
Yeah. If we could solve or remedy somewhat the labor situation and the supply chain, I think that the economy is poised to just roar, to come back. But this is really putting a wet blanket on everything. One more. Yes, ma'am.
I was just wondering if you or the party had any concrete plans to incentivize workers to help them get back in the workforce.
Well, I think that I don't know that we will be the ones that are incentivizing, but I think businesses themselves are coming up with those things to do all they can to get. I think that's really where it needs to come from, is the businesses themselves providing incentives. And I think that's coming, but it is a huge problem.
The growing economy does that. That's how, if you have a growing economy, then supply and demand, that creates those better benefits. That's how it should work. The problem is too much government is getting in the way of that.
One more.
I thought you said one more a while ago.
Please.
Thank you, Senator. Just wondering if
the big meat companies bear any responsibility for the higher prices that consumers are paying? I heard middlemen blame, but they seem to be.
I'm glad you took this.
Well,
It's an important question.
No, it is an important question because John's a cow-calf state, I'm a cow-calf state, and this is something that really is affecting our producers. Labor is a big part of that. A lot of these plants are running very short-handed, so they can't operate at full capacity. Other things, the USDA recently came down and with reducing line speeds, making it such that you can't operate as quickly as you could because of, for whatever reason. They were operating very safely in that regard, so I think that's been a factor. And really the list goes on and on. So what we need to do is get more competition. USDA has been helpful in that regard. And then also the other thing is more transparency with pricing. That's the other thing that would be helpful. So we had a really good hearing in the Ag Committee regarding this, and so I think everybody really is working hard. The problem is, and this is kind of getting in the weeds, but as you start building new facilities, you're talking about $100,000 per cow slaughtered. So if you're slaughtering 10 cows a day, which is nothing, then you're talking about $1 million investment. So this is a real problem. This is one, though, that unlike some of the other things that we're talking about, we're actually working on very, very hard to come up with a solution. And again, I think two things that there is agreement throughout the industry is more competition and then also more transparency. And I think maybe looking at some of our imports as to what's going on in that area.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Very important. Too much concentration in the processing industry, no question about it. We have got to find ways to address that. And that means not only more competition, more information, more pricing transparency. We have legislation where any number of bills that we're working to do that. The administration needs to do more, both USDA and DOJ, in terms of them looking at pricing in the markets. And then we've got to find ways to get more players into the processing industry of all different sizes, right? So we're coming up with ideas and programs and concepts to get more alternatives for livestock producers to market, their cattle or hogs or whatever it may be. But yeah, this is an issue that we're working on. We need to work on it aggressively. We're starting to make some progress in terms of getting the different cattle associations looking at some of these concepts. You saw recently now Grassley and Fisher have gotten together on a bill. I like that because it takes some of the concepts that Grassley had in his 50-14 as far as cash sales, and then some of the ideas that actually Sonny Perdue brought forward that Deb Fisher now has captured. We've got the contract library in there as well. It's a bill I sponsor. So we're starting to bring some of these concepts together in a way that I hope will create a consensus where we can move some of this legislation and address this very important problem that you brought up.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you all very much. We appreciate it. Thank you.